Good morning. Right then. So, what are we doing today? A continuation of trying to use ICE to make a tab document example is what we're trying to do. I've done a couple of days off stream, just tinkering around with ICE and the project and trying to sort of, I don't know, make some progress really. Some progress has been made. But I'm wondering whether today's the day we need to make a decision or whether we just continue. Yeah. Okay, anyway, so let's go back to the spreadsheet with the details. Let me just paste the link to it in the chat as well. There we go. So here we are. The spreadsheet. I've updated the iced section on the left hand side, and I put some notes in here with my findings after using it for over a week now, I think. Yes, I mean it survived over a week, so I guess that's good. So red flags, let's talk about the red flags. Occurrences of test, not many. The focus does seem to be sort of like simple toy desktop apps still. Now I say this because let's have a look. So the showcase for ICE, this is on the ICE website. The showcase for ICE, most of the apps are sort of like simple little apps with like maybe one window and just like a few controls or something like that, right? Or they look like websites, you know, that kind of thing, in the case of this series Troxide one. And, you know, an emoji picker and a two-window head tracking thing, and, you know, ones where you've got like a window and you've got a whole bunch of controls on it to do stuff, or a one-window keyboard app, a one-window save editor, a chess game, one-window Luda Savvy game backup thing. And most of these are sort of simple apps. All simple apps. So this is why I say like simple/toy apps. Like, is there an example of something like I don't know, let's say Microsoft Word, or a PCB editing software, or a photo editing software, you know, a productivity style app? No, there's not. So that's why I say the focus seems to be like that. Yeah. So that's my thought regarding that. Other red flags. No localization, internationalization built in. And there's also no accessibility built in either, which isn't good. It has a few yeses, and I discovered one example, the pane grid example, which has some nice features. Sort of like a docking window thing, right? Other red flags, architecture overview. I mean, there is like a little bit here, right? But it doesn't really tell you that much. It doesn't tell you what goes on underneath the hood. It only tells you it from the user-facing side of things. It only says, it's how your application interacts with the framework. But if you want to write a widget or something like that, no. No documentation regarding writing a widget. Yeah. So that's not ideal. So the book is very minimal. There's not much in the way of architecture overview. The discoverability I found is poor. it's not as bad as the frameworks that use DSLs, which have got terrible discoverability. And it's not as good as other frameworks, say Visio and Cushy, for instance. They were quite discoverable the way they worked. So, for instance, let's have a look at this. For instance, in the... Oh, where are we? Let's go to my code. You know, in the view thing, here we go. So, you know, you create a button and then you want to do something with it. And there's some things like this. But when you try and do styling, you're like, oh, well, what goes in here? It turns out what goes on in there is you find a method by looking through the code base which returns a style such as this one. So you're supposed to magically know that you can go button primary or something like this. It's not very discoverable. Yeah, so that's what I mean by the discoverability. It's not hideous, but it's not great either. But you don't know what the methods are. You don't know where the methods are, and you have to go searching around for them. Similar to how you have to go searching around DSL documentation to work out what things you can do inside a DSL. It's not too bad. I mean, I say that. I've not used it that much yet. Still. Even after a week. GUI testability may be okay. I might actually try doing a bit of this today. Yeah. Other issues, there was that one to do with text selection when selecting from the right. As with most of the other frameworks that I've been trying thus far, there are no good examples showing how to structure a non-trivial application into reusable components and modules, each with their own state. So this is why there's lots of examples, this is why I think there's lots of examples of simple applications, because you just bundle all the state into one giant struct. Right? And with a simple application, it's not too bad. It doesn't overwhelm you. But if you've got a non-trivial application with lots of components to it, you can't just bundle everything together. No. It just gets completely out of hand and makes managing a large project and all the pull requests and giving work to developers and letting them work in isolation without breaking everybody else's code a nightmare if you bundle everything together. So yeah, so there's not good examples on how to do it. So for instance, most examples have a giant message enum. Let's have a look at the Tor example as a case in point. So if we find the Tor one, I'll find it in a moment. Here it is. So for instance, let's just minimize this. So for instance, there are two things to note here. One, you've got an application structure which has got all of the state in it. Two, you've got a message which basically has all the messages in it. So, yeah. What I would like to see, instead of screen and then an enum here and then some of this, you know, like this toggler thing here, right? This toggler is a good example. The way that the Tor application works, let's just run it so you can see. Come on, speedy machine. Let's find the code that I'm going to show you next as well. Toggle screen toggler. Right. This one. Yeah. It's getting there. Right. So this is the tour, and there's one that's got a toggler. This one. Right. This is the state. This is the state for this screen or page as you go through this tour, right? So the tour is split up into screens, each screen having its own view, and you would think each screen would have its own state, but no. No. No, no. No. The Boolean value for this is just dumped in, instead of it being in the screen itself, you know, there's a implementation for screen, right? Instead of it being somewhere in the screen, it's not. It's just dumped here, and we can see the usage of it here. So the message for the screens aren't with the screens, they're in the main part of the app. And the way the state is handled is that the main application's got an update and it handles the message, and it just, instead of delegating the message to the screen or having the screen, the particular instance of a screen handling the state, no, doesn't happen. Yeah. And the methods to construct the views are also bundled in to the main application instead of being put in their own enum instance or implementation, for instance. So the tour is an example of how the state is all bundled together in most of these applications, which isn't good. So far there's been, there's a decent amount of widgets and some decent examples, but they're not too easy to find. Yeah, the community is pretty helpful. I'll talk about that a little bit more in a minute. Yes, there's lots of useless API documentation. So what there is inside this cargo file is a lint. There's some linting. Some lints defined somewhere. Yeah. Anyway, one of these lints, missing docs, right? Missing docs. It throws an error if there's missing documentation on a method. But what that results in is crap documentation and not good documentation, because you're basically trying to get your code to compile and trying to make it run, right? And then the best time to do documentation is when it's finished and not as you're writing it, right? So, but because your code can't compile, because you've got the lint turned on, you have to add documentation before it's finished. And then because you've added documentation, which is basically very simple, it often means that you never come back and actually improve it and update it. But the lint passes, the lint passes the test, so everything's fine, right? No. So there's lots of useless documentation. Example, if we go to the widget and look at some of the methods on here, I've got a method called funTag and it returns a tag. Right? So what's the documentation for this going to be? Oh, it returns the tag of the widget. Oh, great, like I couldn't see that from the message, from the function signature. Is there any point to this documentation existing? No. No. And loads of them are like this, like throughout the entire project. So you think, oh yeah, it's got great API doc. No. No. And that's because the lint is turned on. If you turn the lint off, and had a pre-commit hook or something like that, or reviewed where the missing documentation was, that might be better than using the lint. So, for instance, if I remove this one and try and compile it, this is the error that you get. So operate. Oh, I don't know. Let's write applies an operation to the widget. Well, really. But what is it doing? Why does it need all these things? What is an operation? Where do I go to read more about operations? You know, this kind of... That's the information I want, not just this useless applies an operation to the widget. Oh, really? I've got an operation and it's like working on self. You know. So, API documentation, not great. Key aspects entirely undocumented, such as, I mean, I've looked a little bit, I didn't find it. I haven't looked everywhere. But for some key aspects, it's like I can't find any documentation on it. So, events. So what kind of events? So on a widget, you have this on event, right? Okay, how do I use this? Okay, let's have a look. Events. Let's have a look at event. A user interface event. How does the event system work? How? What are you supposed to do? There's not a lot of documentation for it. I don't know. I mean, you can look at some implementations of on event. Oh, here's one. It just delegates it. Okay, but what's it doing with it? What are you supposed to do inside an on event if you're implementing or overriding on event? You know, that kind of information is what I mean. So like, you know, events, do they propagate? Who receives events? Can I look at them if I'm not a widget? Can I hook into them somehow? Can I log them? You know, where do they go? Do they propagate up a tree? Is there a tree? Don't know. Yeah. So one of the other pain points that I've had with this is that you get a lot of blah 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 is not implemented for blah 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 when building views. What do I mean by that? Well, if you create a row and don't have an into on it, I'm building the wrong thing. Hold on. Let's try that again. And let's just take the type off here for a minute. Trying to work out how to get this one to come up. Maybe it was... Let's just do that for a moment. Yeah, that one's not too bad there. I'm trying to think where it comes up now. I can't remember where it comes up, but it does come up quite a lot. And then what you end up having to do is defining some type with a lifetime and using map. But it's frequently unclear what you've done wrong. In this particular case, it wasn't too bad because they used somewhere else, like further down here. Can't remember where it comes up, but often you just need to put an into, define a type, or use map on things. But it's not clear what you're supposed to do and why you're supposed to do it. You just get a blah 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 is not implemented for blah 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 with the things that you're creating. Yeah. Let's talk about look and feel for a moment. Let's talk about look and feel. Right, so what does it look like right now? Oh yeah, hold on. Put that back. So I had a conversation in the Discord server. Was it yesterday or the day before? I think it might have been the day before. About look and feel. So I'm running Windows, right? And it doesn't matter what operating system you're using. But I'm of an age where I remember that all apps used to look very similar. Right? In Windows 3.1, all the controls were very similar, all the dialogues were very similar, all parts of the operating system were very similar, and many parts of many other third-party applications were all very similar. And this is because there's a style guide for Windows, and there's style guides for other operating systems. There used to be. These days, I don't know. And these look and feels, right, were what's considered native, right? And everything was fine until programs like Winamp came along and ruined that for everybody with all these skinnable applications, right? And this is way before, like, the internet was super popular. I mean, Winamp was around when the internet was around, so yeah, you know, early days of the internet, right? And then the internet came along, and then people started having web browsers, and then you've got forms on web browsers, and they didn't look anything like the native applications. And then some people decided that it'd be good if we use the same web technologies inside an app that runs locally. So then you've got this mismatched style of a website running in an application which doesn't conform to the platform's style guide, and neither did Winamp, and I hated Winamp as well. No, I was far happy with other programs such as MediaMonkey, for instance, which at least looks native. Right, so native theme, and then everything was fine until Windows 8 came out. And Windows 8 came out and it had to have tablet compatible user interfaces. Now, Windows was usable on tablets and pen systems before, right? Wacom tablets and all this kind of stuff you could use quite happily, and there were touchscreen interfaces. They were often a little bit clunky because most of the user interfaces weren't designed around human-sized fingers. They were designed around a clicky mouse pointer, right? So Windows 8 came along and tried to make it so that Microsoft could sell things to rival the Apple iPad. And this is when everything went completely and utterly pear-shaped in terms of native on Windows. Because now you've got two user interfaces. You've got stuff for tablets, and then you've got not tablet stuff. And it was a mess. And then another, on a later version of Windows, Microsoft decided to drop the Metro styling and come up with some other UI style, which is what you find in Windows 11 now. So on Windows, you've got the control panel still, because Microsoft are so great at this. And you've got this kind of style, right? And then you've got this kind of style. And then you've also got the settings application, which is this kind of style. So if you ask yourself, I want a native look and feel cross-platform user interface, it's pretty hard for the GUI framework designers to solve that question, or answer that question, or provide it, right? Because they go, well, what do you mean by native? Because even Microsoft don't know what is native anymore, because there's at least 3 different UI styles within Microsoft's own applications. So how's the user supposed to know what is native, right? How did we arrive at this? Microsoft were lazy when it came to implementing things in Windows 7, right? And they also needed to provide backwards compatibility for all their existing applications, which of course use the old styles. So you're never going to get away from the fact that if you introduce a new styling system, you're going to have a mismatch of like apps using the old style and apps using the new style, if you want backwards compatibility. So, you know, native look and feel. So the last thing you want, really, is another Weber-like GUI look and feel for desktop apps. Right, what I want is, for these frameworks, ICE included, to have at least one option that matches one of the styles on the platform. So for Windows, for instance, you know, it's 2024, so this is probably the style of native in 2024, as opposed to the old sort of control panel style things, right? So you'd want ICE to look like this. I want ICE, or other frameworks, to look like this out of the box. And I'm fairly sure that quite a few users look like that. However, I might be wrong. The ICE developer thinks that this is a non-issue. No, I don't agree with it. But you know, people are allowed to disagree. It's not a. It's not an indication of quality of the framework. It's just different goals, right? My goal for a GUI framework, if I was writing one, would be to make one that looked like the platform native one. So if I'm running it on a Mac, I have a theme which makes it look like a Mac. And then if I'm running it on Windows, I have a theme that makes it look like one of the native styles on Windows. And when you start the app up, it picks the appropriate theme based on the operating system that you're using. And away you go. And there's enough commonality between most of the native sort of controls and so on like that to make it so that you can do that. But maybe you have a tiny bit of, if my platform is this, then render this type of element, and if it's this, then render this type of element. But for the most part, you know, you can achieve it. Yeah. So the ICE lead dev says your users aren't going to care. So nor should you as a developer. That was the statement. I don't agree with that. I care. I want my users to have a native experience with applications that I write. I don't want to have to spend my time trying to make my application, which is just currently this test application, to make it look as if it's a native app. I don't want to spend all that time making all the widgets look like native widgets. No, I want the framework. I want that out of the box of the framework. And apparently, none of the other users of ICE want that either. I say that because of the. Where are we? Because of the various different GUI styles, as indicated by the showcase page. Like pretty much every single one of these has a different user interface style. No, don't like it. Now, is it a deal breaker? Is it a deal breaker? That's the question I've been trying to answer. You see, the problem is if there was another framework that I could turn to and use it that had a native look and feel, I would. But there isn't. It doesn't exist. So I don't have any choice. And I don't like not having any choice. It feels like my hands are tied behind my back, and you're going to go, this is what you get in 2024. You can't have a cross-platform GUI that looks like a native application. No. Or are you mad? Are you mad? You can't have it. So, with that in mind, what's the alternative? Is there an alternative? There is an alternative. Write native apps. There is an alternative. We could use this. Do I want to use this? Do I want to write and maintain native apps for each of the each of the apps that I want to do, and have all the testing overhead that goes along with it? No, not really. For all of those things. Might I do it yet? Possibly. Possibly. Yeah. You can make apps that look like native apps because it's using a native library. And you can do it in Rust. You can write Windows apps in Rust. Look, it's got native controls. We had a look at some of these in the previous videos, but so I could use this if I wanted to. I might. I don't know whether I'm going to do it on stream, but I might have a go at it just to see what it's like, just to see, because I'm still not sold on any of the Rust GUI frameworks that I've used thus far. Anyway, so that's my thoughts as of today. So, right. So today we're going to continue a little bit more because there's a few things I want to try and discover about ICE before I make a decision one way or the other. Yeah. So let's have a look at the code and the functionality of the application that we've got. So, what are we trying to build? Right. The letter M. Hi, welcome to the stream. No problem. The link to the source that we're looking at now is in the video description as well, so you can bring this up, which also contains this document that we're looking at here. So what I've been trying to build is sort of like a GUI framework test case, which is what I feel sort of fulfills the main criteria of some modern productivity style app. Right? So it's got main window, toolbars, tab content. It can display different types of tabs, like home tabs, document tabs, file tabs, image tabs, this kind of thing. And there's a bunch of things in here, and we've got little X's on the ones that are done. One of the things that is not done, however, is for the tabs is this. I want the document or the content to be loaded in the background. I want to try doing this today. Now, fortunately, one of the other community members has already done this, so we can look at his example for inspiration. But we can also have a go at doing it ourselves first and then compare the two solutions, which I feel might be more useful, because that'll then tell me if I can find out even how to do it. And there's merit in being able to discover how to do things as opposed to just looking at an example that someone else has done. So the discoverability, the documentation aspects of it, you would be interested in that. Whereas an example, you're like, okay, there's an example of how to do it. But if there wasn't an example of how to do it, then how do you do it, and what resources do you need to find out how to do it? Right. So we want to try and do this. But what have we got so far? Let's run it. So, yeah, tabs. Let's talk about tabs for a minute. So, the iced AW tabs has some issues. Let me show you these tabs, right? And then I'll show you what happened with iced AW tabs. The iced AW is a second crate with additional widgets, right, which aren't part of the main iced, and they're not kept up to date with the iced framework, so they always lag behind, basically, which is annoying because they contain some useful things. And it basically means if you want to use the latest version of ICE, which you do because it's 0.13 or something like this, so it's very open to change. So if something is open to change, you never want to really be lagging behind very far, because otherwise when you upgrade to a new version of it, you've got a lot of changes to make. But if you're using the latest version of the code, or once every week update it or something like that, then you haven't got lots of unexpected work all in one go, and it basically makes it a bit easier. If you've got a 1.0 version of a crate, then fine, but if it's bleeding edge and it's not even 1.0 yet, then you need to sort of keep up to date with it. So let's show you the issue. Right, so we've got the log down the bottom here, and when I select text in here, it shows me the message view content selection and then what I just selected, pull text, right? If I click this tab and do this one, it shows me the same message but for the other tab. Fine. Okay, so let's just hold that thought for a moment. It shows one view message with what you've selected. Great. When you make a selection. So let's get rid of this. And let's go git checkout tabbed document example with iced AW tabs, right? And then let's just run this, which might take a moment because it has to do the cargo refresh, and then it's got to build it because of dependencies and all the rest of it. Right, we're waiting for these to do their things. There we go. Project. Okay, so now we're looking at the version of the program with iced AW tabs, and we've got two tabs. Right, now look at the message down the bottom here. When I click a tab, it shows view twice. Now watch this. If I'm on text file 2 and make a selection, it's showing view content selection none, view content selection some, more content, right? If I switch tab and select something in here, right? So basically what's happening, it's rebuilding the view for the tab that's hidden or not displayed. No. Imagine if you've got like an expensive view, right? An expensive view, I don't know, maybe it displays an image that's constructed of a bunch of layers, or a 3D object, or some Gerber files and a whole bunch of other things, or even all of those things at the same time, which is possible. No, you can't have it creating multiple views all the time. Okay. Other issues with iced AW, when you close a tab, so if I go home, text file 1 image, and then go text file 1 and then close it, I expect that the image file 1 is going to be the tab that's shown when I close this one. That does not happen. It just selects the first tab, so that's bad. Additionally, when I select text here, and then go to another tab, and then go back to it, the text selection is missing. Now, I don't think this is actually a fault of the tabs thing. I think this is more of a fault of the editor. Because the state is maintained, the selection state is maintained, the cursor position state is maintained, the focus is maintained, but it's not displayed when the view is recreated, and the view is recreated when you switch tabs. So there's bugs in Iced. Additionally, we've got some issues with some font rendering. This is supposed to be a close button, but it's not. Yeah. And then there's this situation where, dearie me, tab document UI, assets, text file 1, and then click home. There's this situation. So none of the tabs have got the same height. They should all have the same height regardless. And it's not, that's not useful, having tabs that do that. So there's issues with tab rendering when the window is too small to display the tabs, which can happen very easily. I mean, if I was to open like maybe 2 more tabs right now, right, it would start doing that. And this isn't an unreasonably small window. So it's not very good. So let's kill that. So we'll switch back to the latest code. So what that means is that I had to implement my own tabs. Great. So I'm reinventing the wheel again. Great. I don't want to be reinventing the wheel. I just want to use components that already exist. I'm not in the business of writing widgets and all this malarkey. No. I'm in the business of trying to create software using the framework. But the framework is immature. I mean, it's 0.13, the number tells us that, right? So it's not an unfair statement to say. It might have been used for a number of years by a number of people for a number of projects, but it's still immature. And the API is often clunky. Right. So now that we've got our own tabs, so for instance, I did that same thing again. I've got home, text file 1, text file 2, image file. And if I go to this one and close it, I expect image file 1 to be selected. And lo and behold, it is. Because I did it. And it works properly. Right. Where do we go with tabs? Right. Additionally, and I haven't done anything with the toolbar buttons yet, but the tab bar buttons, you can now scroll them. There's other ways of solving the problem. You can have like a little drop-down button or an ellipsis button where you can see the other tabs. A scrollable one is all right to start with. It's a simple enough solution. And thanks to Thorn for in the community for giving an example of that. It seems to work. You can use the mouse wheel to move them left and right, and there's like a teeny tiny little scroll bar which you can grab and move. I don't really like the teeny tiny little scroll bar, but it does work, I suppose. But you know, none of the rest of the tabs on my entire system work that way, so it's not really a native look and feel. Yeah. So, you know. So, yeah. Next problem that we've got. Next problem that we've got is that when I open tabs, I haven't gone into this yet, but when I open tabs, when I open that tab then, instead of it appearing on the right hand side, it appeared where it first was. And this is because the slot mapper's got an empty slot and it put a new thing in that empty slot. So I need to update the tabs to use index map or something similar to that, so that the order of insertions is preserved. But it's, it's not done yet. Next problem. So when you select something over here, fine, it's selected. You go over here and you select something over here, and then you go back to here and it's gone. So this isn't to do with the tab implementation, it's just a bug with this editor thing, I think. And that's where we're at with this. Okay. Right. So on the last stream, I think we were struggling with how to get the state to be managed properly. So in order to do that, we had to remove all usage of the tab trait. So the tab trait has now gone. We used to have a tab trait. Let's look at the Git commit history. This one. Much history. This one. Let's have a look what happened. So previously in the tabs thing, we had a trait to say each tab that you want implements view, label, and update. You think, fine, seems reasonable. Could we get it to actually work? No. Why couldn't we get it to work? Because of lifetimes on the elements. Because of lifetimes on the elements. That's the primary thing. So the editor tab has some state, which is the content, and that content has a lifetime. And if you put that state inside a mutex and then try and borrow the mutex to get a reference to it for when you build the view, that doesn't work, because when you lock the mutex, you get a mutex guard, and then if you try and take a reference to something that belongs to the mutex guard, then when the mutex is unlocked at the end of the scope, that reference to that thing basically can't exist anymore because it belonged to the mutex. Lifetimes and references, basically. That's what it all boils down to. So initially, before we had the trait, we had some functions that were passed in to the update method as opposed to an instance of a tab. So we just revert back to that. And what that means is the update functions that used to be implemented in app tabs, this view and this label thing, which basically delegate this view method to the particular instance of the view method. This sort of block here basically gets moved out of there and ends up being stuck back into the main app itself and used where the view is created. So that same sort of chunk basically ended up back in here. So the view function, this is the view function. It basically delegates back to the particular type of tabs view method. And when it does that, if you need some state, you can pass the state directly. You can pass a mutable reference to the state, which means you don't need to use a mutex, which therefore means to the editor that you're returning has a lifetime which is the same as the application, which means everything is okay. But it kind of sucks because traits are good, right? No? I liked my tab trait. It was nice. It was good. It was clear what you had to do. And then, now the API is like, for the tabs thing, it's like that you've got this view function. Where is it? You've got an update function, you've got a view function. And then you're like, well, I've got a view function, a label function, and the update method has got an update function. It's like, yeah, not ideal. But you know, it is what it is. It is what it is. So the app tabs trait went, and the tabs trait went. Yeah. So this is what we had. Individual reusable tab should implement this tab, and then the application which uses a reusable tab should implement this. So you have multiple for each tab you implement the tab trait, and for the application you implement app tabs once. That's what we had. But now we've just got a bunch of closures sitting around. So that's not ideal. I didn't like it. I had to do it in order to progress. But I don't like it. So let's have a look at the application itself, the application structure itself, and let's just see what we ended up with at this point. Tab document UI, yes, this. So what we've ended up with is tabs and documents, and it's important that the documents are owned by the application and not owned by the tabs. Because say if you wanted a new window, you can have windows that use a document, and you can have tabs in a window that use a document, right? It's also important if you want to have the facility where you want multiple tabs or multiple windows editing or accessing the same document. So imagine you've got an editor like the one we're looking at now, and we go split and move right. Wait, hold on. Is it that one? Like this. This is two tabs with the same document. And if I make a change in one, it's changed in the other one. This is the kind of thing that we want, right? And then perhaps we can pull this out to a floating window to do this. You know? This is why the application needs to own the document and not the tab, to support that kind of behavior, which, yes, is in the bonus points section of the requirements. And that greatly influences the architecture. Yes. Yeah. Okay, so that's sort of what we've ended up with. Yeah, you know. Yeah. Okay, so let's try loading documents in the background. Let's try writing some code instead of waffle on about code all day long. That's an hour of waffling on about code so far. This time flies by, doesn't it? How is that possibly an hour already? Still it is. Hot jiggity. All right then. So what are we going to do? What are we going to do here? It all starts with the open button, right? Does it? Maybe. Let's look at it for a moment. So we've got this open button, and this is where you select a file and then a tab gets created and then the file gets opened. So this is the bit that perhaps we need to change. Right. So on our view, we've got a toolbar. Yeah, somewhere we've got a toolbar. I might be able to find it at some point. View. Here we go. We've got an open button, and it goes tool message open document. And this is then handled by some other bit of code somewhere. So it says it gets passed to the update method of the toolbar, which then turns it into an action that says open document. So okay, so now we've got some code that handles this somewhere. So yeah, this is where it's handled. So it's on toolbar message. It goes, if you open a document, then it calls this method. And then this is where it shows the file dialog. And then what does it do? I forget. I don't even remember. Oh yes, if you actually got a result, it would call open document with the path. And I think this is sort of where we start to need to make the changes. So perhaps instead of actually opening the document here and creating a new tab, because this open document thing here is what creates the tab and then so on, perhaps we need to create a task, an async task, which loads it, creates a tab and then loads it in the background and then shows the tab and then says loading on the tab. So it needs to create a tab but then wait for the document to be loaded in the background or something like that. So yeah. So if we change this, do we change this? And a task, we can perform a task, which then gives us it takes a future which do we have any good example of how to use tasks? Documentation. Not much in the way of documentation. Is there tasks? No. Can we find other usages for? I mean, it takes a method which returns t. But what happens to this t? What is t? A task may produce a bunch of values of type t. It gets actions. Actions. Let's see. Let's see. I mean, what happens to this changelog saved? Is it fed back into the update method? It probably is. Let's have a look at this example. But I'm having to guess here. So we've got this. So when it goes message next, sometimes it creates a task and returns it. And when that task is completed, it returns one of these. And where's this used? And this is used in the same update method to then do something else. Okay. Right. Then what? So what have we got? We've got this task none thing here, but we want to do we want to do something else here? Do we want to what do we do? What's open document doing? Let's have a look at this. So we know the type of document to create, right? Because of the file extension. But because there's a few ways of doing this. Do we want to display the rest of the UI but with sort of like, I don't know, do we want to display the icon in the tab that relates to the type of image that you're loading, or do we just want to display like a loading spinner and a tab that says loading, and then replace that tab with a different tab when it has loaded? Or do we want to display the document tab with the right icon to start with, like a picture of an image or a picture of a text, right? And then inside that have either a container which says loading or a container with the actual content in it. I feel it's more appropriate to do the latter. You could have a loading tab and replace it, but I'm not sure whether that's right. So, you know, we can have open document, create the same type of document as before, and create the tab. Do we need to futz around with tasks at all at this point? Don't know. Okay. Let's have a look at one of the documents, for instance. So a document is created like this. So it goes new, and then it passes the path in from the file selector, and it goes creating document. And this is where it loads the actual thing. And what does a text document own? It owns some state, which has got the content, right? Can you create any of the state until you've loaded the document? So we've got a sidebar. Can't create, well, we can create a sidebar. It's this main content bit, really. Like, what if this was an option here? and then we move this somewhere else. I don't know where yet. And make it none to start with. And then somehow we need to tell it to do something. Let's move this to a load method. Right. And somehow we need to call this load method. We've got a path here, don't we? Yeah. So we can go self.path. So somehow we need to call this. And then in the view, what? I guess we have to go match and then what, stick this in here. And return that. And then if we don't have one, like a placeholder, I don't know, what is it? It's something like that. Well, you know, and now we're doomed because we're not returning the same types of things. Do we need to put this in a container? So that both match arms return the same thing? Something like that. We need to take that off, and this as well. Yeah, and then we've got to deal with the edit thing as well. Maybe something like this. I suppose we could use if is some there, but you know, whatever. Not a mutable one, just a reference to it. Okay, so that works there, but now we're not loading the document, right? But let's just make sure it doesn't crash or anything. So this says loading in it now. Right, fine. So now somehow we need to call load on here. How? So I suppose we need to have update call with the text document message, which is load. So let's do it from here. Text document message load. And if we get that, then we call self.load. I guess. And we need to return an action. And there's not going to be any other action. Fine. So now we need to somehow emit this. How do we emit this? Do we load it in? I mean, we've got no async thing going on here yet. Should this load be an async function? Should it really be like that? Don't know. Yeah. So, you know, we could make it an async function, and then when we call it, we get a future back. And that future needs to be awaited by something, which I think is what the task stuff does. So maybe we shouldn't call it here, but instead we should create an action with something. I'm just going to put a U32 here. It's not going to be a U32 that we actually need. But if we were to do this with that in, and then make this an async fun, and then try and compile it, it'll tell us what the type is supposed to be. Found a future. And if I remember rightly, the future is whatever this returns. And it's got a type. Is it like that? I forget. Is it an impl here that we have? No. And then you can't do that. Put it in a box maybe? You can't do debug on that. That's never going to work. Let's comment that out. And we've got to put it in a box apparently. And we've got a lifetime that might not live long enough. Well, of course. Yeah, I think I need to look at some other examples of how people do things again. Because this is quickly going completely and utterly pear-shaped. So we basically need something that we can pass to perform, right? And other people do that by something like this. And this is just a async function which doesn't use self, but it gives you a result. Right. Sure. So we can't do that. And if we can't do that, then what do we do with this? How do we get the path? I suppose we can pass it in. But then we've got some content. So I guess what we need a we do that. I know I'm still completely and utterly fuzzy on this. Yeah, it'd be nice if there was some documentation to say how you're supposed to use tasks and do async functions and stuff, wouldn't it? Maybe there is. Let's have a quick look. Let's look in the book. First steps. No. Runtime. No. Okay. Yeah, right. So this gives you a thing. Let's have a quick look at this command. What? Why does clicking? Oh, I see. Right, does that? Fine. Well, I suppose that's interesting, I suppose. So then it's got a load method here. We could borrow this, in fact. We are doing pretty much exactly the same as this, but load self path. What's this doing? Right, so this doesn't use self. Uh-huh. So later we could change the, okay. So let's see where this is called and see what it does with the tuple that's returned here. Right, so this is where it starts the application up, and then it's supposed to return a tuple of some state and a thing to do. Okay, it's not entirely what I was after. Let's look for other perform. Didn't we have it in the find thing already? Oh, that one. This one. So this method returns a result, and you can call a weight in it, and it's async. So what do we need to do? Something similar to that, but in none of these they're not using box in any of these things. But they're just doing perform. They're never putting these in a message. So my thought of using an action to do something is probably wrong. So maybe we don't do that here. We just return the action here. Where do we process actions? I suppose where this is called. So here we don't do anything. So is this where we're really supposed to do it? This seems stupid. Let me return another action. I think this is no. It really doesn't feel right. It doesn't feel right at all. Like, I mean, there was some feedback that says you shouldn't be creating lots of different types of action things, which might be true. I still don't know about that yet. But if we say what a task, I don't know, it just seems pretty dumb. I mean, let's say document tab action none. And somehow we need to create a task. And then what? do I create a new instance of task? Maybe, yes. And then it was text document load with the document path. And we probably need to clone the path and make it not a reference. Perhaps, I don't know. Why is it moaning here? And then what are you supposed to do with it? Are you supposed to create another message? What? Loaded? What with the how do you... This is all manner of dumb, this is. Just no. No, so you can't do that. So we definitely can't make this return a text editor content because of that clone requirement. So I don't know. I suppose we just get the text. And then this line that I've got here probably needs to go in text document message loaded and then what, self dot state content replace with but this wants a reference to some text. Oh, hold on. I suppose we can do that. And then there's no action to return. Maybe. So then we need this variant, I suppose. You see, I suppose it makes some kind of sense. What? Why is it complaining about this? task doesn't have debug on it. Yeah, it's true. Which means I can't derive debug on that. Yeah, we can't do this, so we can't print out the action. We'd have to derive our own debug if we wanted to do that. Let's just comment that out for now. So this update method is returning an action. Did we do it? Are we missing something? Probably. I forget. So what happens currently? Who can remember? Not me. There's too many things. So we go on toolbar message. And it goes open document. And we go open document and we call open document, which creates a new document. And that's all you get. Right, but somehow we need to emit this still. But we're never emitting this still. So should we be returning something here? Let's make it return a message as well. Maybe like that. I don't really like that indentation style. Let's fix that. Okay, so now this new method here is called here. We're probably going to need to wrap this into something. Now we're going to need to fix this one to do something else. And this one's just going to say none for now. Why would you do that? Wrong bracket. That one. Okay, so that means that now we've got this, and we've got to fix this and go. I can see the next one that's going to come, but you know, whatever. Right, so now it's confused because it can't. These types here are different. So I mean, what can we do here? Do we map it to some other type of message? Is it a tab message? I suppose it is. And then the tab message is tab kind message. I suppose that might work. Let's go message, tab message, tab message, tab kind message. With a message in it, perhaps? Is that the right type of thing here? Oh, we don't have a tab key yet because we've not created a tab. But somehow we've got a message and we need to dispatch it to the right tab. Kind of doomed at this point. I mean, we could certainly can't return it. What can we do? We get a key here. This bit of code we could make into a function perhaps that returned the key. Go on then, let's try that. I don't know. Are we allowed to do this here? Yeah, that's what I thought. I suppose this is still a... Yeah, we're doomed again. Oh, hold on. I think you can put this... Are you allowed to do this? I forget. Foo. Are we allowed to do this? Oh. I think we are allowed to do that. Which means that instead of returning a document here, we can go make tab and then we can put the key in here, perhaps something dumb like this. Can we do this? Yeah, I took off one thing. Document kind. And then document tab message. Oh, wait. Good Lord, this is crazy. That is all manner of dumb. So we've got a message wrapped in a message, wrapped in a message, wrapped in a message. But okay, whatever, you know. Let's just rename this to document here at this point. And let's borrow this, put it here. And call this image document message instead. Delete that and call this image document. And then we've got a message. Which I suppose we need to return here. I don't know. Right. So this open document thing is called here. And we've got a result. So let's match on the result. And move this in here. And then what? Oh, wait. Wait a second. Option result message. Oh yeah, okay. We were missing the sum okay result. And if you didn't open a file, you get here, which is going to be, I don't know, what? Nothing to do, I suppose. But here, we have to do something with the message. We just want to emit a message. How do we just emit a message? Task with a message. I suppose it's done. Is it this? Is that what we need to do? I knew it was going to say something like that. Okay, let's just pull this out. And replace foo with self again. Sure. Oh yeah, okay, we've got two of them. So I suppose this is really a make document tab. What do we think? Loading. There's so many moving parts to this, it's ridiculous. Okay, what didn't we do properly? Do we think this message was even emitted? Okay. Did we even return that task? Hold on. So, yeah, we did. Let's go. Let's just see if we get anything. No. It doesn't print out this. Why? Why? We know it added the tab, so what's happened to this? What's happened to it? Open document message is there with a load, which is what we want. An open document. Oh, there's two places where it's called. Fine. This one we're ignoring, and that's what we use when we load things on startup. Well, we've got a message here now. And instead of emitting no tasks, we need to emit a bunch of tasks now, right? So instead of doing that, let's go let tasks is what? Documents to open. Find map, maybe? And then somehow we get a result from one of these. And then if we've got an OK with a message, then what? We return some task done with a message. Otherwise, we return none. Is that right? Is that how you're supposed to use find map? Oh, I was just missing the semicolon, yeah. So we ignore the ones that don't do. Now we've got this tasks, but it's what? Find map, but it's find map. Oh, it's filter map, isn't it? And then we need to collect that into a vec of task message. Right, so now we've got these tasks, but it's a vector of tasks. So we need to return something else instead of that. So we've got this batch. I think it's batch that we might need. Because tasks has got into iterator, right? Because it's a vec. Yeah, that does indeed compile. I'll leave that warning there for now to make me go back and fix it later. Let's see what happens now. So we've got open document message. So that's not working. Let's just try opening it manually. So we've got open document message, then we've got an open file result, and then we've got a message, but nothing happens with message. Let's switch. No. So we've got that. Two more open document, hold on. Can't tell which message is which right now. So is anything, do we even get into that? Let's have a look. So the text document, where we've got an update method, we've got a message. Let's print this message out. Does it even get here, do we think? Are we processing the action properly? Are we generating the action? There's just too many moving parts with this. It's silly. So we've got text document update message load. Text document message load. So we get into here and we're returning an action. And this method is called here. And sure, we can take the underscore off because we are actually using it. And then probably we're not doing anything with this. Document tab action. I don't think we're doing anything with this, are we? That's what we've not done yet. So where this is called we wrap it in one of these. And then we don't do anything with it. Right. So here we need to do something. I don't know what. But these are the things that we have to do. Okay. So task. What? Did we just return task? Maybe. And then what is this? But this is a task of message. And this is a task of text document message. Oh God. Oh, do we need to wrap it or something? What do we got to do? Do we go task to form and then the task and then message? I don't know. None. I don't know. But we need to do something with this. We need to put this. Yeah. So we can't do that. It's not quite as simple as that. And now I've forgotten where the code that was supposed that I was literally just editing was. Was it this? Yes, it was this, wasn't it? We need to fix this. I suppose it's a tab message. And it's a text document one. And then you put what, that in? there, because this takes a text document message and this task is a text document message. Oh, we got too many brackets. 1, 2, 3. Oh, we need 4 for that one. Do we have to get the message and then put it in ourselves? What are we not doing here? What's the problem? I've got one of those, in one of those, in one of those. Let's just ignore the fact that there's 1,000 things. What's the problem here? Oh, it needs a tab key in order to do that. Great. Do we have a tab key in order to create a message? We need it, otherwise it can't dispatch to the right thing. I guess we need a tab key in here as well then. At which point we can go key and then action, and then we can put the key in here. Is it this one? Oh no. So do we need a key in here as well? Probably. Oh, hold on, I put the key in the wrong thing. It's here. There we go. That makes some kind of sense, but I don't like it. Fine. And then now we need to put keys everywhere. On tab message. So the tab kind message here doesn't have a key in it, which it shouldn't really have. So I think this needs to be tab message. If it's got a tab kind message, if it's wait, what? Oh, my brain hurts. I've lost. Where's the key gone? I've lost it. I've completely lost it. Tab message has got a key. Wait a sec. What? My brain hurts. Where's the key gone? Right, that's where the key's gone. So the key is used here, but we need to pass it to this update function, which means this needs to take a tab key, which means now we get a key which we need to do something with, but I've forgotten what. Can't remember all this stuff. There's too much stuff. Where do we get to? Why do we need the key again? Why do I care about the key? I did care about the key for some reason, but I can't remember why. It wasn't for this. It wasn't for that. Why did I care about the key? This enum variant takes 2 arguments. Right, so is that was where we wanted to put the key, wasn't it? Yes, I remember now. My IDE is helping me, but my brain is not. Okay, it's not a future. Do I just map the task here instead of doing perform again? Maybe we do. Maybe we do this instead. Is that right? Sure. Don't need a key on this one. Oops, a daisy. Just print that out. We can't do this, can we? No. Let's print this key out, just so that we know what's happening. Do we think it's going to work? I think it worked. So if we go open, and then try and open the other file, this one, we can look at the log of messages. So yeah, we loaded it using a task. Whoop-de-doo! What do we think about that? We think it's pretty crazy. So let's quickly review the craziness. So it all started in our text thing, because we want a load thing to say, once you create the tab, load a file. Then we've got loaded, which has a string in it. And then when we create a new text document, instead of just returning self, we return self and a message to emit, which seems to be the pattern. And then we move the loading code into an async function, which we could call async methods in, such as using stud async, like we saw in that to-dos program, right? So we've got an async function that we're calling. I suppose that's good. I mean, it'll be good in the application that I'm actually trying to build. And then what we did, when we don't have the content, we display a loading message, and when we do have the content, we display the actual content in a text editor. And we wrapped both the message and the text editor in a container. Then we changed the update method so that when you get the message that says load, the action that you're supposed to perform is load. And then we added some handling, which I don't know, seems slightly misplaced to me, but let's have a look at it. I think it was it here? No. Was it here? No. Was it here? Yes. Yes. So if the document returns an action, then you need to handle the action. And if the action was load, then it creates a task and wraps that task in a document tab action with a text document task. Then, because of that, we need to add handling for the result of this update method, which I think was in here. Somewhere. Yeah, this bit. So if we got a document tab action and it was a text document task, then we map the task so that when it completes, it sends the result back to the right tab by using the tab key. And in order to put the tab key in the tab kind message, we needed to futz around with the actions and add the key into it so that it knows where it came from, so it knows where it can go back to. Oh my god. Then we changed the startup code so that the tasks that Open Document now give us back are used in a batch. And we changed the Open Document method so that it returns OK with a message. And we moved the creation of a document tab into a method so that we could call it, get the key for the tab that was created, so that we can put it in the message so that we know where to send the message. And we had to wrap the message in 3 other messages. And then we had to make a similar change to the image tab. Let's do a commit real quick. Load text documents load text documents via tasks. I guess that's what we did. Let's fix up the image document so that it works the same way. And then we'll call that particular task done. So the image document creates an image here from the path. And it also gets the image dimensions. It's going to be slightly more involved, this is. Okay, so what do we need to do here? We can't have a handle until we've loaded the document. Yeah. So let's just make this an optional one, right? Whatever. We're going to add load and loaded. Now, the message that we could send before was a string. And all the things that you put in messages need to have clone on them. Who thinks that handle has got clone on it? Oh my god, it does. We're okay. I'm kind of surprised. It's probably okay. Right, fine. Do we think it's got debug on it? Because we've got debug here, right? No. So we won't be doing that. So I guess what we need to do is make this return load and make this none. And then we can't call image dimensions because we don't have an image. Technically, we have a path, but it needs to go and look at the image. Yeah. I'm going to leave the dimensions for now. But this one, we're going to move. Load. And it's going to be async. And what it needs a path buff in order to do that, right? And it's supposed to be returning image document message, I think. With the handle. And then in here we could call async functions if we wanted to. I don't think this actually really does much. It doesn't actually load the image. It just creates an ID and stores the path buff. It doesn't actually load the image. But whatever, it's fine for this demonstration. Okay. So we need an update method now, which needs to do this. So load needs to return an image document action of load. I can't remember what these actions were supposed to contain. It was just that, wasn't it? Yes. Then we need to add some handling for that at some point. And when it's loaded, we get handle. And then we can go self.handle.replace with a handle. And then we need to return another action, which is none. Right. And then let's do the same. Right, well, what can we do here? We've already got a container. So I suppose we can go match self.handle. And then if it's a some handle, then we need to put this in here. And if we haven't got one, then we want a container of loading. Maybe. I suppose we need to return this here. Oh. Syntax errors, that's all right. It doesn't implement debug. Yeah, image document message doesn't implement debug, so we can't have debug here. Great. Oh, we're supposed to be using this one. We can't have debug here either. And thus, we can't have it here. And we can't print out any of the messages. Lovely! Oh, fantastic. So, why? Why? Why is that trait band even there? this one needs to have debug, right? Which means can I specify the trait band on this? I forget. Tab message has got it. Tab kind message. This one needs debug, but it can't have debug on it because this one doesn't have debug on it. And this one needs to have debug on it, but it can't because handle doesn't implement debug. So we have to go and then what do you go? F.write stir and go to do improve this. I suppose this needs to be a reference. Okay. So create a new one. We don't load it. We say load. Right. The update method is currently returning some actions now. So where we call this, we need to handle those actions in the same way that we did here. And if it's an image document action with nothing, then we return this. If it's an image document, action of type load, then we need to do this stuff. But we don't have. Oh wait. That one does that. Oh well, it's inferred the wrong type. And now it's got the right type. And then where this is called, I don't remember. Is there anything else that we need to do? What's the problem here? Type mismatch. What's the problem? So load returns an image document message. Wait, what? Oh. I've got the wrong thing there, haven't I? It's just supposed to be returning the handle here. And then I suppose we need to handle this one. That's what we were missing. And we need to handle it in the same way. Yeah. By mapping it to the appropriate type, which is not one of these. But it is one of those. Yeah, I'm not sure about these actions. Okay, it compiles, but does it load the image? It does indeed load the image. Let's introduce a temporary delay into the load method on the image, just so that we can see it loading. So there's probably an async wait thing, right? I don't know the API for this. Who knows? Rust async wait for 2 seconds and just see what other people do. Yeah, exactly. There needs to be some async method that you can use. I mean, I don't really want to add a dependency on Tokyo to sleep for a couple of seconds. Time sleep. I don't really want to go down that path. I mean, we could. Task sleep. Oh look. Let's see if we can do this. This one maybe. Why? No. We can create durations. Well, I don't think that's the right task. This said Oh, I see, right. Okay, fine. We'll do that. I'm okay with that. Async stood. That's fine. But not millis, from seconds, perhaps? 2? Is there? No? No? I suppose we could just change it to 2000 milliseconds, but, you know. Is there not like from... Oh, it's from secs. Why? Can we deprecate this and call it seconds, please? Like, why? All of the other ones, millis, milliseconds, seconds, micros, microseconds. Why not just seconds? Yeah, whatever. Right, let's see what happens when we run it, if we think it's actually going to compile. So what we're supposed to see is when we open an image, it does nothing for 2 seconds and then shows you an image, right? Which simulates loading an image slowly. So we've got our image here. Let's close it and reopen it. Assets, image, loading, loaded. It works. Let's do that on the text one as well. Right. I'm just going to amend this. So, let's run it again. So we should see loading on the text as well. That worked. It might not have been entirely obvious because the window was off screen, but it did in fact do it. Okay, so you know. How long did that take to do? Was that an hour and 50 minutes to do that? Do we like the result? I mean, the wrapping of actions is pretty mad. And the wrapping of all the messages is pretty mad. But, you know, we can tick a box now, look. We can tick a box. And we can actually tick 2 boxes. Ta-da! Let's amend that one more time. So you can do it, I guess, which is good. The method of doing it, I'm not entirely sure about. Because the async functions that we used don't have access to self on it. This one does. Oh, it takes an owned version. Yeah, none of the other ones do it either, you see. It's interesting. I'm just looking for instances of async function which takes self. I don't think any of them will, because of that lifetime problem, right? Yeah. So, how useful is it? Wait a second. So this async function that we call, let's have a look at it. The result of that gets passed to this. Do we have access to the document at this point? We do. And it's mutable. I guess this could let me just look at this for a second, because this is kind of weird, because this takes a closure, right, where you get the result, and we could do this, and we could also do this, which we can go document dot this text document, no, document state. This isn't public. We could add a method on here which goes set content, right? But for now, let me just do this. And these aren't public either, which is fine. Let me just make it public temporarily. I'm just trying to see what you can do. Content is a string. No, I suppose we could. Yeah. You wouldn't want to do it there anyway. Yeah, no, yeah, it is. But you have to put it in a message. The fact that you have to put the result in a message in order to have the update thing take what's in the message and do something with it is a bit funky. But okay, it is what it is. Because all changes to that document should be through the update method, right? That's the whole point of the architecture. And it shouldn't be done through some arbitrary thing over here. It's all supposed to be done through this. Which means that you have to put things in messages. Which is annoying because all the messages need to implement debug. Okay, fine. It is what it is. Personally, coming from the embedded world, I don't think there should be a requirement for debug on most things unless you're making a debug build. Because only when you're doing the debug build do you want debug messaging. And or if you're doing logging, then you want to implement a logging trait rather than a debug trait. So, display or log format trait, for instance. And then if you're compiling in debug mode, then you use the config attributes to add the additional trait bound at compile time. But requiring debug as part of the application message, I don't like. This, where is it? This trait bound. For me, there should be a type like that is this, which is conditionally defined depending on how you're building the application, or with whatever features you've got on it. So if you had a debug feature for ICE, for instance, then you wouldn't have this. If you didn't have that feature, then you wouldn't add the debug trait on it. That's how I would do it. But just randomly requiring everybody to put debug on everything, I don't like that. Anyway, moving on. So let me just revert these. There we go. Fine. So I think that's probably going to do it for today's stream. We've achieved some stuff. We achieved what we set out to do, so that was good. We've got async loading of documents. Magic. We could look at the implementation that Thorn did, because he did something similar, because he's been basically trying to follow my requirements and building the same thing but in a different way. The way he did it was this. So he had a document, and you could either have an image document or you could have a text document, right? But then you've got a loading document. Now I don't like that, because you don't get to see the sidebar, you don't get to see other GUI elements. Whereas my approach, you get to see the sidebar and then the document loads in it. So here, where is it? You always see the sidebar and then the content loads in. And the sidebar is different between images and text documents. So that's why I did it the way I did it. Anyway, there we are. Right. Oh wait, you couldn't see what I was looking at. I switched the camera over to the other one. Sorry about that. Let me switch it back. Hold on. There we go. Let me just run this again. So you always see the sidebar over here, and then the document loads in it. So if I open it again, tab document UI assets, this one. So you always see the sidebar, you get loading in here, and then it loads it in. And I want it so that the user has an idea of what might be there before it appears. Similarly, if we were to add icons to the tabs and display like a picture of a text file for text documents and an image for an image file, then this approach of having a document wouldn't really work. Because the document would be a loading document, and therefore how are you supposed to choose the icon for a loading document? You'd have to put something that wasn't one of the document types in there. Still, there we are. Different approaches. Interesting. All right. So that's it for today, folks. Hope this was useful. If it was, don't forget to click the subscribe button. Yeah. Where do we go next? I suppose let's think about that. Where do we go next with this? Do I want to try and achieve some of the other requirements? Or should I try tinkering around with native apps and see what that's like? I don't know. I think I'll think about that off stream and not bore you guys with it. So, yeah, look forward to the next stream. Who knows what we're going to be doing? Who knows what we're going to be doing? Yeah, press the subscribe button and you'll find out. So, just remember, folks, it's only software. How hard can it be? We'll find out in the next one. See ya.